A major question at the heart of superhero comics and just the genre itself is, should superheroes kill? Should they even be allowed to kill by the publishers? Because as we all know, the main goal of these heroes is to rehabilitate their criminals, right? To rehabilitate everybody because that is the dream. And I know a lot of people from a critique-based standpoint like to call it out as if the superhero genre doesn't know what they're doing. What I think to be a better question is, how far do you have to go before you become unredeemable? Because there are characters like Magneto who has done, or at least attempted, mass murder on a huge level, even planetary scale. Yet now we could see him being very buddy-buddy with Xavier and the X-Men. But then we have characters that have bad redemption arcs like a Harley Quinn from Injustice. Which, oh my goodness, bro, I don't even want to talk about this. Her main thing is that she was an accomplice and helped set up the bomb that blew up Metropolis and killing a bunch of named recognizable heroes, along with being privy to the information of Joker drugging Superman to make him kill not only his wife, but unborn child. But after Superman killed the Joker, she changed sides. And then we're like, wait, would you have stayed by his side, your love of your life, which imagine having Joker as your partner, but would you have stayed by his side if he managed to stay alive? That is highly questionable, but if somebody wants to go on the straight and narrow, who are we to decline them? It's better for them to be on our side than the enemies, especially if they have superpowers. Also, do you think that them creating all of this conflict means that they should have just either been killed or put into a prison complex, or do you think it should be a utility-based standard? If a Harley Quinn did something crazy, she should just go to jail or be killed, or if somebody like a Magneto did something crazy, it's better to keep him on our side because he is an Omega level mutant, and he could be a great help for huge level-wide conflicts. What do you guys think? In my opinion, if the reasoning makes sense and they really tried to change your life around, and if they're just sympathetic. And another aspect to this is, how sympathetic can a villain be to get away with certain things? How much does their logic have to make sense before we're like, okay, you know what? No, this is not, we're not going to allow this anymore. We're going to have to put a stop to this right now. Like, when does that get to the point? Like Mr. Freeze, yes, he's doing all of this for his wife, but the amount of people that he's killed on this conquest, does the means justify the ends in your eyes, right? Yeah, it's for a noble cause. Yes, he might be an anti-villain, but one life is more than enough to experience heavy consequences for the rest of your life. More than that, and I would be willing to see somebody resurrect you multiple times so that you could live out multiple lifetime jail sentences. But the name of the game is always rehabilitation, and if you want to go on a redemption arc to help out your fellow heroes and your fellow man, I won't stop you, especially if it's either well written. I really enjoy the storylines that they were a part of as a hero or trying to be a hero, or maybe the redemption arc was so iconic and so influential to the entire genre of superheroes that we don't even realize that they started out as a villain. All of these are proper credentials to be on my list, and feel free to leave your favorite ones down in the comments down below, or just to think about it as we go along. And daily reminder, timestamps, is this going to be a bit in my video for months to come? I don't know. So make sure to sit back, relax, lock in actually, get your stuff together, get some I was gonna say Coke. Oh no. Get some popcorn, I don't know what you guys eat, and yeah, lock in. Let's get it. The first character, and probably the most important when it comes to this discussion, is Eddie Brock and Venom. Now, as all of us know who are big Venom fans, the coexistence or the combination of both Eddie and the symbiote create Venom. No other host will be called Venom in this household, but for the sake of not exactly consistency, but just for us to understand what I'm talking about, I will refer to Eddie Brock as Eddie Brock. I will refer to the symbiote as Venom, okay? Get it? Got it? Good. Now, the thing about Eddie Brock, we have to look at where he started off as, and he was a very, I guess, at his core, a man deeply driven by pride. If you look very early on into his career as a journalist, if you've watched Spider-Man 3 or the animated series, you get a very good glimpse and hint of what this was like. A very one-to-one, actually, adaptation for the most part. And his self-worth, like a lot of us here, is tied to our reputation. When Spider-Man outed him for having a false Sin Eater article, the identity of the Sin Eater was published in this article, and Spider-Man caught the right guy. So from there, his ego and his career took a giant tank, right? His ego couldn't handle that fall. And he never really saw it as a personal failure. He got fired, his wife left him, a bunch of stuff. I'm pretty sure he even got cancer at that point. I don't know if that was retconned or not. I have to go back and read those McFarlane issues, but he sees it as a failure tied to Spider-Man entirely. He blames him for his life unraveling. And this externalization of blame is key. Rather than confronting all of the mistakes that he went through, it was his fault, he let his bitterness catch up to him, and self-pity ended up defining him. He saw himself more as a victim than a flawed man. Of course, then we have to go into his Catholicism, and of course, that comes with Catholic guilt. He was raised a Catholic, and just like Daredevil, guilt looms over every single decision he has, and it played a very dual role in my opinion. There was self-loathing, right, when he failed, but it also fueled his twisted sense of justice. He wanted to confess and be forgiven for everything that he's done, but he also wanted to seek vengeance, especially in the very early days of being Venom. So the moral conflict of his character is this contradiction. And then he gets bonded with the Venom symbiote. Of course, he was praying at a church, but little did he know, Spider-Man was at that same church ripping off the Venom symbiote. It fell down, and he got bonded to him. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This was an angel coming down and affirming every single thing that he thought. He now had the power to reenact his darkest fantasies. This is all that he ever wanted. And from there, he became very obsessive. Venom didn't just want to kill Spider-Man. He wanted to haunt him. He wanted to stalk him. He wanted to terrorize him at every single waking moment. He would do some very petty and goofy things like appearing in front of a window and then because of his super speed, just getting out of the way, so making Spider-Man seem that he's crazy. Of course, the symbiote negates Spider-Man's spider sense, so he doesn't know what he saw was real or false. He would end up using his stealth abilities, his camouflage, and all of his, of course, his black exterior to blend in with the shadows, to appear out of nowhere, to give him shocks. He wants to be a jump scare without trying to pop out too much. If you look at Spectacular Spider-Man in that TV show, watch it. It is a perfect demonstration of Venom in his early years. He would just capture one of his loved ones just to run the fade. But then it would just lead to a stalemate, so then you would stalk him some more. He was consumed by this mission, and then he was unable to let go of the past. It made him very dangerous and unpredictable to Spider-Man, and he often justified his violence through a warped sense of justice, saying that he was only hurting bad people, but who are these bad people? In his mind, it was just Spider-Man. Who is his definition of bad? It was rooted in very personal vendettas, but then there was a switch. His twisted morality then turned into true altruism. What happens is that this leads to the true Lethal Protector era. He goes to San Antonio and helps out the poor, the downtrodden, and people who are down on their luck, just like how he was. And he ends up doing this really funny thing where he ends up like patting this one lady that he saves after eating a guy alive, and she ends up, look at this lady, he ends up showing glimpses of compassion, protecting these people, and expressing guilt over unnecessary harm that he has to do. Even though he has a temper, you begin to see all of the layers peeling back. Somebody who was yearning to do the right thing but didn't really know how to. He evolved from somebody who's like, I'll kill you if you cross me, to somebody who wants to protect those who can't protect themselves. And this becomes even more evident when he becomes a father, right? In the Donny Cates era, he now has a new purpose. He is forced to grow up emotionally. He is forced to prioritize and to not become a man-child baby. Get rid of all of the stupid stuff. Focus on being a father. He becomes more introspective, more emotionally restrained, I guess I would say, and he is no longer driven by revenge. If we look at his time as Anti-Venom, he still had a huge ego because at that point in time, he was given God-level healing abilities, and he was seen as kind of like a messiah. He pictured himself as the next coming of Christ, like, I can heal you, my child. Look at me with my tendrils, you will now be whole. Like, he was playing into the shtick, and the worst part about it is that he actually believed it. He was so delulu that he felt like it was him ascending to angelhood. But now he becomes the King in Black, and now he has to fight for something much greater than himself. Not only his son, but also being the leader of the symbiotes. All of this is now a part of his watch. He can't let things go awry because his responsibilities now expend far into the cosmos. There's a full 180. He is now a hero. The other half of the coin is the Venom symbiote, and their main trait, as a lot of us know, is emotional dependency. It doesn't crave a bond, physically, but like emotionally, mentally, right? And its first major trauma, other than the fact that their first host was like a genocidal maniac, it isn't Deadpool, as a lot of you guys think it is. That has been retconned because that in and of itself was a retcon, and superhero comics are confusing. Anyways, to not get sidetracked, their first major trauma was the rejection of Spider-Man. That abandonment that happened at that bell, it scarred it deeply. It viewed Peter not just as a host, but as a partner, maybe even a loved one. They see a lot of the people there that they bond with kind of like lovers, and this trauma festered and boiled up until it became resentment. They lashed out, not out of hatred, but they felt emotionally betrayed. If we look at the hosts, we realize the symbiote amplifies all of the traits that they have. If you look at Peter, it heightened Peter's abilities in the original comic, and it made him more arrogant. But it wasn't the work of the symbiote, that was all Peter's doing. But then, of course, through further retcons, seeing the Spider-Man film and Spectacular Spider-Man TV show, and all those things get really popular in the 90s animated series, they're like, you know what, we're going to implement that into comics. The symbiote now has mind-altering effects. And from here, it heightened his aggression and his impulsiveness. And with Eddie Brock, it fed on his rage, his vengeance, and his desire for, I guess, retribution, if we're going to look at it from a Catholic perspective. And it makes a symbiote an emotional mirror. Its personality can shift depending on the host, but there will obviously be key traits here and there that it will maintain and carry on to the next. In particular, its intensity, possessiveness, and I guess neediness, like, get off me, bro, like, why are you parasite, I guess. But the primal aspect of the symbiote is that it can be very jealous. If we look at all of the hosts that it has, it refers to them as its other, and it can become very unhinged when separated. A lot of withdrawal symptoms as if it was coming off of its favorite drug. That's how it sees people, as their drug. And it's crazy because this spiral of rage and desperation can turn into cannibalism, into mass murder. It could even lead to them, once they're finally bonded to a host, to push them into eating others and their brain. It views other hosts as cheaters or thieves when it bonds with somebody new after that separation, and now they want to go back and fight them. When Eddie Brock was separated from the symbiote now saw Eddie as weak and was on a kill or bond basis. And what that means is that it was on sight. If the symbiote saw Eddie, their goal was to either kill him or bring him back into the fold. That was the only two options there. Very black and white, if you think about it. And what we see through Eddie's confessions later on is that the symbiote got progressively worse and worse. Even when it got onto Matt Gargan, it fed onto his negative emotions and then got even crazier. It became arrogant, scornful, sadistic, really. It berates a lot of its hosts for their shortcomings. They consider their previous hosts as second-rate for abandoning them. They even had the habit of being mad disrespectful and hurtful against the host for doing certain things to prevent them from letting loose. From Eddie's perspective, one thing that he said was that there were certain points in time when all he could see was red ruin at its most intense, right? There was an ocean of darkness trying to drown him out in full-on rage and bloodlust, and he had to hold it back 24/7. That was the state of this guy, almost Carnage-like in his ferocity. But then he finally got a hold of Flash Thompson through this weird Spider-Man-like project where Flash Thompson, who recently lost his legs in a war because he is a soldier, I'm pretty sure it was in Afghanistan, he was now a part of this new program to give him back his abilities and to become a special ops metahuman soldier. But he could only wear the suit for a certain short amount of time, because if it goes past a certain limit, it will completely bond with Flash. And from that point, it becomes very dangerous to remove the suit, especially considering that he is a human. And on top of that, he almost had an L3R3 like rage type of moment where he's able to transform into the OG Venom design and become much more bulkier when he loses control. But the good thing about this is that over prolonged missions and getting to know Flash, the symbiote starts to exhibit more emotional development. It's trying to get better, it learns empathy, it relearns having restraint, and it begins to respect humans, their morality, and their mortality, and that you can't just while out on anybody you see. There has to be reasons for killing people, not just because they assault somebody. You gotta know your cards right. And with Flash, he doesn't see the Venom symbiote like a tool for revenge like Eddie did. He sees it as a partner. And from that, you have to remember that's all the symbiote wants. And now they are in a thriving environment. The Flash, did I just call him the Flash? Flash calls the symbiote a friend, and that's something he never truly had before. He wants to be better now. He wants to atone for his past. Even when bonded with Lee Price later on, he actively struggles against him, showing that he now has moral convictions. He is his own person without all of the violence. He is the complete, well, not really the complete, but he is an opposite mirror to Carnage now. We saw him get closer and closer to the mindset of his progeny, but now he's back to where he should be. And in the King in Black era, the symbiote joins Eddie once again to defeat Null. And it shows you how a creature like a symbiote who has been plagued with all of this mental scarring and damage can come back from the brink, who could evolve from a former creature of darkness to now being able to run it up with the other heroes for the sake of heroism, for the sake of helping humanity, and to save the world. That's what we need. These two people, two sides of the same coin, the Venom symbiote and Eddie, they are broken, but when they come together, they form a whole. Now their bond is deep, emotional, and in one of the best relationships in all of Marvel. Over time, they learned that they could work together without having a vendetta to act upon. And this is one of the best arcs, probably the best in my opinion, because of how long it has lasted and how that's even the case today. Granted, both of these guys are in a very crazy predicament right now because Eddie is bonded to the Carnage symbiote, and his entire mindset is trying to prevent Carnage from killing people and to focus that rage onto crazy, unredeemable killers. But that's hard. He even blacks out only to come back and realize that Carnage killed everybody in its vicinity. It is crazy mind games. And the Venom symbiote, or just the symbiote, is with Mary Jane and is now gold. Take with that as you will, but the arc is complete and it is still one of the best in comics. That was a bit of a long one, a 2-in-1 if you will, but this next one is going to be in honor of the Fantastic Four movie dropping, well, it already dropped 2 weeks ago, a week ago, I don't know. Good movie, by the way. But this is going to be about the Silver Surfer, in particular, Norrin Radd. So if you guys don't know, he was born on a planet, a utopian planet, mind you, called Zenn-La. I love cosmic names for planets, things in general. I don't know about you guys, but it just itches a weird scratch on my brain. But this society is where all the material needs that you want, it's met. And conflict itself is practically non-existent. But despite all of this, Norrin has this very introspective, restless part about him, and he's delusioned by the superficiality, I guess, of his people's paradise. From a young age, as a little boy, he demonstrated a philosophical and romantic yearning for what else is out there. We want more. It's curiosity, something that he will have as he matures, and something that you'll see more of as he's burdened with more pain and more things that are directly his own fault. He had this as a kid, and because of this, as an adult, he's one of the most human cosmic entities there is, despite being an alien. And he wanted adventure, he wanted to find a meaning, he wanted a purpose. He wasn't just satisfied with peace, because once you're there, nothing happens. You can't grow, because there's no challenge, there's no depth. He wanted more. This early idealism that he had wasn't really naive. It made him unique and uniquely prepared for the coming threat of Galactus. So, to save his world, he had to agree to become his Herald. And what you have to be a Herald is you have to be given the power cosmic by Galactus. He was transformed into the Silver Surfer, and his goal was to search the stars for planets and worlds that were habitable so that he could then guide Galactus to it so that he could then satiate his hunger. Galactus's only goal in life is to consume, and for Silver Surfer to keep his planet alive, he has to become a lackey, and it's really sad when you think about it. His goal was to travel to the stars, but he's doing it in literally a way that he never thought was going to happen, and you didn't expect the amount of burden that he would experience doing his dream. He always wanted to travel. Now he can not only do it, but also far greater than the speed of light. This should be his dream, but it became a nightmare. While he still stayed noble at heart, he was now complicit to millions, if not billions of death. the destruction of 100,000 or more worlds. He is an accomplice to helping end entire civilizations. You are second in command to multiple worldwide genocides. And as you might expect, this did lead to a lot of paradoxes in his thinking, right? He's like, this is something that I never wanted to happen. This goes against my entire being. But then he tried to rationalize it and be like, okay, wait, this is all for the greater good. Or, well, I guess in his opinion, it's his planet that gets to survive at the end of the day. But also, it was just necessary. It's like a constant evil, right? You need evil for good to exist and vice versa. Maybe he was just playing his part in the grand scheme of cosmic order. The weight of the guilt, though, it ended up slowly crushing him. In my opinion, he is the embodiment of loneliness across fiction. In most instances, his defining trait is being isolated. Trapped on Earth by Galactus for rebelling, he was an alien among humans. And from here, Norn became kind of detached, solemn, contemplative. Metaphysical questions are at the heart of any Silver Surfer comic that you read. The most painful thing about all of this is that despite having the powers of basically a god, he is helpless to fight against somebody like Galactus. Or maybe he's not. He is able to stand up against people like him, but there's something holding him back. He sees himself not as a god, but as a sinner. And that mental block ruins him for a long time. But eventually he rebels. He's freed from Galactus's control. And now he dedicates his entire existence to protecting the innocent, to those he wants to atone to for the worlds that he helped destroy. This trauma that he went through, it opened his mind even more. Yes, while as a child and young adult, he was very contemplative of a lot of things in our universe. As he roamed space on his Silver Surfer, he ended up speaking a lot more in metaphors. He ended up musing about the stars, about life, about the fragility of human, alien, whatever existence of life. He becomes very existential, pondering what it really means to be free, because this entire time he was acting as a slave and saw it as the greater good. What's the cost of power? Well, if he did the things that Silver Surfer did, it means a lifetime of redemption. He always will regret what he did, just like what we do. We have many regrets in our lifetimes. We might have random moments throughout the day where we remember how we treated somebody wrong. But for him, it's at a much greater scale. It makes you think maybe we should just be a lot more nicer to each other, considering what these characters have to deal with in grief. We do that to each other all the time, but our lifespan is much shorter. Why do we act like this? I'm sure Silver Surfer ponders the exact same thing once he observes Earth. He does this in Silver Surfer Requiem as well. I talk about this comic in length in my Overpowered Heroes video. Make sure to check that out. But yeah, he sees himself as a person who serves, kind of like Superman. We serve the weak and defenseless. Not exactly the weak, but the people who get taken advantage of. He puts the suffering of others above himself, above his own peace. And that in and of itself, while you think that might be a living hell, this is his way to regain his happiness. There's a question that I thought about as I've been saying this, is that he looks at it like this. What do you do when you've seen everything that you could possibly observe in the foreseeable, conceivable universe, and all you want to do is make it right? You'll do anything. There is not going to be a single thing that will stop you on this path. And that's what he needs. That's what a lot of people don't really have, is they don't have the drive or motivation or whatever to stay on the beaten path, because as soon as something bad happens to them, they revert back. Fortunately for Silver Surfer, and how he kind of gets a bit of the benefit of the doubt, is mainly because this path was forced onto him. He didn't choose to be a bad guy. He was placed in that position. But now he has the power of Cosmic. Now he can matter manipulate. Now he can create stars in the palm of his hand. As a fallen angel who's now getting his wings back in shape, trying to save as much people as he can, he is in the perfect position to be the savior the people didn't know they needed. This is going to be a little bit of a different one, because this is not even going to be a villain transitioning into a hero. It's going to be a very gray area character transforming into a hero, and that is Damian Wayne, the son of Bruce Wayne and Talia al Ghul, grown in this weird artificial womb, let's just say, and trained since birth to be a member of the League of Assassins. So ever since he was like 5, 6, maybe even 4 years old, he's been killing people. He got bodies on his repertoire, okay? And what we see here is that he is an effortless prodigy. Compared to all of the other Robins, he's probably the most skilled from his age than where everybody else was at when they had the mantle of Robin. He has the most martial prowess and possibilities, potential to be even better than his father, because unlike all the other people under his wing, he was trained at a very young age, pretty similar to Cassandra Cain. And what we see when he first plants foot onto Gotham is his worldview. It's very early on in his development, but it's very much rooted in supremacy, right? Because he is the heir of the League of Assassins and the Batman legacy. I would be glazing myself every single step of the way. I'd be like, bro, you cannot be a Wayne child, my boy. Like, I understand why he was acting so arrogant. I would too. If you had the amount of bank that he had, if you had the amount of intelligence that he had, if you had the physical prowess and martial ability, if you had the genetic good looks, why would you not be as arrogant? I know a lot of people don't like the way that he acts, but I'm telling you, if you were in his shoes, you would act the same way, especially considering that he was trained to have this mindset, to be better, to know that you're better than everybody else. It's this weird sense of entitlement that you don't ever want to see, but it's completely justifiable in his case. And he doesn't stay there despite what a lot of people might be telling you. He is a completely developed character, but he does start off as very brutal and violent, right? His early behavior, very mocking and belittling, and even attacking his fellow heroes at times, including the Bat family. His first interaction with Tim Drake was to sucker punch him and tell him that he was the Blood Son and that he deserved the mantle of Robin more than he did. For no reason whatsoever, he doesn't hesitate to kill his enemies in his early years, seeing death as a necessary consequence for pursuing justice. He cuts off the head of one of Batman's D-list villains. Was it the Spook? Somebody feel free to correct me, but he cuts off his head, and I'm pretty sure Damian fans chill. He put a grenade in his mouth. I don't know if that's what actually happened in the Batman and Son storyline, but I have a very vivid memory of that being the case in my head. My slideshow might be a bit wrong, but this puts him in direct conflict with Bruce, who forces Damian to adopt a no-kill rule, and he does very reluctantly follow his father's words because he wants to be the next Batman. How else would he do it other than listening to his mentor, right? He was raised in a very cult-like military environment, so he lacks a lot of the conventional or emotional development that you would see for a child his age. So we can't blame him because he was conditioned to be this way. He doesn't understand affection, compassion, or even teamwork at times if it doesn't benefit him. Sometimes, or a lot of the times, you'll be put in team scenarios just so that you can be the carrier, so that you can bring everybody up and everybody will succeed, so that you can be a beacon of what you should be, so that they can go out and do what they need to do, so that they can be successful. In a lot of continuities, we see him take ownership or leadership of certain teams because he sees himself as so much better than everybody else. And one moment that I found very interesting in the Born to Kill arc, which was the opening of New 52 Batman and Robin by Peter Tomasi, a very, very good book, and a really cool companion piece to the New 52 Batman run by Scott Snyder. But one really cool thing here is that we really get to see how he slowly but surely learns the value of life. A firefly falls into his palm, and he looks at it and he's like, okay. And then he crushes it to see if he'll feel anything, and nothing happens. A bat from the Batcave flies near him, and he grabs it out of the air to see if he feels anything. He snapped its neck. And he starts looking at it. He doesn't feel anything, so he just throws it away. It's a very just like guttural and just real and intimate way of seeing somebody try to understand the value of things that are seen to be beneath him. Why should I care about a bat? Why should I care about a creature? But we see him slowly but surely learn more about empathy, even though at the beginning he starts off being very sarcastic. And like whenever he tries to express his emotions, it's very much at the mockery of others, to the point that he never really expresses any real emotion of like guilt or sorrow. He never lets those feelings out. He doesn't wear it on his sleeve because he perceives that as being weak. All of that he masks with either sarcasm or just mocking other people, right? He's very much a trash talker, and that's what I love about Damian for the most part. If you haven't, read Deathstroke by Christopher Priest, and the trash talk that he does to Slade's name is one of the most entertaining things I've seen in my life. I was over here just like flipping pages, just laughing myself to sleep. It was great. But over time, we see him develop into a really compassionate child. And all of this starts off with developing proper connections with the people in the Bat family. Once he felt the need to consistently prove himself to Batman, to have his legacy, and especially to his predecessors like Dick Grayson, Tim Drake, even Jason Todd, he often tries to challenge and fight others, both physically and ideologically, so that he can prove them wrong. even when he's wrong, he doubles down. He does not want to show weakness, showing that he could beat his predecessors, show that he's more likely to become the Batman when compared to them. He is more fit to be Robin than they are, considering that he is at the rightful age of either 10 to 14, maybe even 15 in current continuity, depending on which time we're talking about. And he's beating these full-grown adults with a lifetime of training on their hands. But over time, we see him grow through these connections, right? With Dick Grayson, he is the brother/father figure and the emotional anchor that he never had. Unfortunately for Bruce Wayne, he was out of the picture for the most part when Damian started becoming a big deal in Gotham. But when Bruce came back, he had this sort of acceptance between the both of them. They start to reflect on the man that Damian wants to become. And Bruce realizes that he has to play a bigger role in his son's life, not just as a crime fighter and showing him the ropes of what he should and shouldn't do, but as a son, as a kid, what he should do, enrolling him in school, trying to put him in situations where he can make friends, either of the superhero kind, like in, I don't know, the Teen Titans, or just by making him meet friends through everyday kid activities like playing soccer. That was how he started to fully bring himself back into a lighter position. He doesn't want to be that kid anymore. He now understands the value and the sanctity of human life. And then he meets John Kent, whose friendship really allows Damian to open up, to learn more about vulnerability, and even more about compassion. This kid, John, is the kid of Superman. If he was going to learn compassion from anybody else, it would be from John. And the fact is that he is a kid of similar age, so it is way easier for him to bond with him and to actually speak his mind. The thing about Damian that I really like is that he wants to seek atonement. He even goes on a literal year of blood, a redemption arc, based on him just reviving and helping his previous victims to undo the damage that he caused, to make sure that everybody understands where he's coming from, and even if they don't want to realize that he is sorry and that he will do everything in his power to make it right. He doesn't blindly follow his gut instincts anymore. He tried to change it, and he has changed it to the point that his first thought isn't to kill his enemies, it's to help them, it's to follow the way of the bat and to rehabilitate them. The thing about Damian, he is the embodiment, in my opinion, of the nature versus nurture kind of argument, because he was a boy bred to kill and rule, but now he learns to live a life of a legacy and helping others. His story is one of constant conflict, a war between not only his bloodline, both of them, his beliefs, his instincts, his ideology, and now he believes you can be born in darkness and then later on in life choose the light. It's beautiful. Now, this next pick is pretty interesting because it's something that doesn't exactly stick all the time, but they always come back to it, and that is with Lex Luthor. So, the maniacal maniac genius that he is, he's built on obsession. He amasses a bunch of power and influence through unmatched scientific genius, weaponry, just overall technology that other people don't have, and he has a lot of ambition and a lot of strategical acumen, I guess, right, compared to other people. And he has an unrelenting quest, not exactly for control, kinda. He wants to be the top dog. He believes in his own superiority. But with Superman, when he appears, he makes Lex Luthor feel small. So now he sees Superman as a lob to be as petty as he could possibly be, to be as hateful as he can, because, quote unquote, we see Superman as a stop to progress. If he's helping the planet with all of the issues that they have, how is the human race going to take that next step? And to just put it simply, he thinks that Superman is pretending to be that nice. He's not actually like that, he just cares about his image and his rep. But that's contradictory and hypocritical because that's the same with you. You pretend to have this for the people mindset, but then you scrounge them for all of their money once you build on top of their land, once you take away their jobs, once you make sure that they are employed for LexCorp instead of other things, once you buy out certain businesses to keep their mouth shut, or maybe even taking out the competition literally through people like Mercy, or maybe you even have Metallo or Parasite on your payroll. You're not exactly the best person, Lex, and all the logical reasoning that he gave for why Superman needs to be out of the picture, none of those are true. Those are all excuses just to be hateful because he just wants to be seen as the savior of Metropolis. That can't happen anymore, so what he wants to do is reestablish the status quo. He was the top dog, now he's not. How will I make sure that that happens? Lex is so single-minded. For being so smart, he believes that his destiny, where he should be in the future, is determined through alliances and betrayals. How am I going to get a one-up on Superman? He is a manipulative liar. That might as well just be his natural native tongue. He turns on governments, corporations, powerful individuals, and uses all of those as chess pieces. He ends up working with them only so that he could amass power, using so many different examples and ways of why he should be given this power. Maybe even building a whole layout and how these people he's working with can build themselves more, how they could elevate through his dominance. We will be business partners, only to shoot them in the back. He is, quite frankly, the opposite of Superman. While he's like altruistic, idealistic, constitutional kinda, superpowered. What is Lex? He's a human, he's skeptical, he's cerebral, he's self-driven in a way that is quite narcissistic, honestly. And it leads to him becoming very dangerous. Not in terms of brute force, because we know he's never going to throw hands with any Superman-level threat, but through the way he exploits other people and their vulnerabilities. And we see a little back and forth here. His cold logic, that seems to be the forefront of his entire persona, and then we go back and we see the hidden vulnerability. He's often depicted as emotionally detached, but he has empathy for others. He has a lot of resentment and even insecurity, especially regarding his past, his parents, the Lex Luthor name. Is he worthy enough to carry this mantle, especially in adaptations like Smallville? But throughout the New 52 and even in DC Rebirth, we see him actually change his ways. We see him become a hero and forever evil. The Justice League is taken off of the table, and it's up to Lex to fight against the Crime Syndicate, which is the Earth 3 version of the Justice League, and they're evil and they try to take over Earth Prime. So what he did is gather all of the supervillains that he can, create certain strike forces, and fight back. And he did a hell of a job, and he ended up managing to bring the heroes back as well. So from here, he found a new light. He found a moral path forward. Now he was a member of the Justice League. In DC Rebirth, when Superman died, he decided to take his mantle, iconography and all. He was the new Superman. Even so, that when the New Earth post-crisis Superman came, I know comics is confusing, but bear with me, he ended up working with him as a partner. He saw the Superman as an equal and not as an enemy. Unfortunately, all of this character development did go away, and they ended up reverting him back to the status quo. And this brings us to the Joshua Williamson, Philip Kennedy Johnson era of Lex Luthor, where now we have a full-on twilight and rebirth for the character. So, he now acknowledges that the world does need a Superman, but he doesn't abandon his intellect or his ego. He repackages everything as a corporation, but it's now on his terms. He creates something called Supercorp. He transforms all of the branding of LexCorp and transfers all of that power and resource to Superman. All of his stuff is now his. Imagine all the good that he can do in the world. And this comes right off of the heels of doing something very, very diabolical. So, Superman was known to the world as Clark Kent because of Bendis' run. Brian Michael Bendis, that is, the famous Spider-Man Daredevil writer. And what he did here was use Manchester Black, a person that Superman just learned to respect because he brought him onto Warworld. And if you don't know what Warworld is, it is the planet that Mongol has where he does a bunch of gladiatorial battles, and Superman's main goal was to liberate a bunch of offshoot Kryptonians, and it ended up working. They came back home, the day was saved. But through this mind wipe that Lex Luthor made Black do, everybody forgot who he was, to when you try to force somebody to remember that he was Superman, they end up having a heart attack. So he just breakneck speeds to Lex Luthor, and we realize this mental strength, this mental feat that Black did, ended up killing him, and he was enraged and threw this man straight into prison, but not right after giving him the craziest beatdown of all time. And the aura was crazy. This man was on his rocker. He was telling him, space-time has no meaning for me. I am way more powerful than you will ever imagine. I was spending a huge time next to Genesis material, which was from the New Gods, and a white star. I could teleport now. I have telekinesis. You cannot throw hands with me anymore. I am on a different league. But in prison, it's really interesting because all we see here is that Superman is going about his business, and Lex Luthor is giving him W comms. Like anytime a villain comes in with a new power-up or civilians are in harm's way, he tells him the best way to do it using the resources that he gave him, and by constant study of Superman's powers, he knows what he can and should do in these fights. It's really cool. Also, he has kind of like a power gauger, so he knows how strong certain villains are and what he needs to do. And from here, Lex starts to become more human. His sincerity, his introspection, all of that starts to come out. He now is portrayed as a broken man. He's struggling with memory loss, guilt, and the weight of the past because in a storyline called House of Brainiac, Lex Luthor, he sacrificed his own brain to defeat Brainiac and his ship, but it ended up with him losing his memories, and all of the lore of his past was told to him by his daughter Lena, Superman, Lois Lane, and even his quote-unquote sorta lover, Mercy Graves. And it's quite fun seeing him become a hero. His alignment with Superman and the world that raises very weird, uneasy questions. Can somebody who was built on an empire that was informed on manipulation truly redeem themselves? Even in the pitch, trying to give Superman LexCorp, he was like, if you don't take it, hundreds of thousands of Metropolis citizens will become unemployed and it will be your fault. So he was using those same tactics even in his entire pitch to tell Superman this is the best way to save not only Metropolis but also the world. Some of those things, I guess old habits just die hard. And finally, even to the issues that are coming out right now, the cool thing about it is while he might have a little bit of a back and forth dynamic with Superman where they don't exactly trust each other, Lex is still trying to be a good guy. He managed to kill one of the clones at Lex's previous altar before he got all of his memories wiped. A clone that version of Lex created who was as strong as Superman, and he ended up using his tools to kill him, but Superman's like, no, there was another way. Of course, Superman being how he is, he realizes that everybody can be saved, especially with his set of powers and his tenacity. But Lex is like, if we let this go on for any longer, he is going to get more powerful, more ruthless, and he's going to destroy the entire city. But even then, he's able to put aside his differences to help Superman when it counts. Before that, he actually managed to tinker with Brainiac tech to shrink down not only Doomsday, but an entire armada of alien spacecrafts trying to invade Earth. He was right there with Superman as the last line of defense. The brilliant part about that is that Luthor remains the quintessential supervillain because he now has all of the mad scientist tendencies and quirks, but now it's repurposed for the greater good. His path mirrors a broader theme of redemption about second chances. Second chances are integral to modern Superman lore. Lex isn't just trying to make amends, he's wrestling with demons that he himself has created. What does a flawed genius do when the world suddenly starts to believe in him, when they start to trust him? That's the entire thesis, and that's what makes Lex Luthor as a good guy so compelling. The man of mutant evolution, Magneto. Now, Magneto is going to be one of our favorites, if not our favorite X-Men character of all time. I'm putting that on the board right now. Watching X-Men 97, it makes me realize that you only need one really good adaptation in recent memory for you to realize how much you love a character, because I was always a Magneto superfan, but now I can glaze alongside normies. It's great. It just reaffirms what you've always thought, but as a character, I don't want to talk about his past because I went in detail on his trauma in my trauma video, and I discussed his life as a Holocaust survivor. There is a lot of meaty, juicy details of all the things he went through. They made a lot of comic series just about that, so you know there's a lot of stuff to go through. But what I will want to talk about in this video is how I see his philosophy and thesis. So if you think about it, he kind of got a little gateway opening a perceived vision of the future just by being a Jewish child in Nazi Germany. Because if you think about it, and I'm letting you guys think a little bit here, what is the correlation between child Magneto and current Magneto? What is the similarity? What kind of a light bulb could spark in both of them? He was given a little window, a gateway to the future, just by being a Jewish child in Nazi Germany. If you think about it just a little bit, mutants, like the Jewish people before them, will face extinction. But this is the ideology here. This will happen unless they take control of their future. To Magneto, coexistence, what is it? It's not exactly peace. Hate crimes are going to happen. hate crimes continue to happen, and it's only going to escalate even further as time passes. It's a delay before another genocide. This belief justifies every single action that he takes. He becomes a very militant protector of mutant kind. All of this trauma makes him very radical in his beliefs. He doesn't just advocate for mutant rights, he demands superiority. It's even in the name. While we are Homo sapiens sapiens, their thing is literally called Homo superior. Why aren't they on top? That is his entire outlook on this situation, and that kind of makes sense. He is the rightful next phase of evolution. All of his people are. The humans, they are driven by fear, and that makes it so that they will inevitably crash out on the mutants just for the sake of their safety. If you want to live, you must be the one in control. You have to establish an entire mutant nation, of course that being Genosha, later Krakoa, launch entire terrorist attacks, that's a part of his plan, and preemptively strike against mutant threats. Who will cause the most damage to my people? It's the entire Winter Soldier idea, where Nick Fury had a bunch of helicarriers pointed at all the people around the Earth, trying to kill people before a crime happens. For Magneto, his goal is to strike against any construction sites for Sentinels and all the people responsible for these sites. No cost is too high if it literally guarantees their survival, even if it's for just a few days. But the thing to note here is that it's not entirely all Magneto's fault. His powers are directly linked to his stability, and it says here, as his powers grew, he became more mentally unstable. This doesn't just make him erratic, it makes him volatile. At his worst, we've seen him flatten cities, threaten the entire planet with extinction, putting himself into a messiah complex. He sees himself as a god. This self-perception leads to more damage, less control of his powers, and it seems like he's walking on a tightrope. But thankfully, once he keeps his emotions in check, he is literally unbreakable. And that brings us to today. He is an ally to the X-Men, to the people of Earth, if they aren't trying to fight against him. One of the most important developments with him is his neutral alignment with the X-Men and finally going over to their side. He even taught some mutants in Xavier's school. He served on the Quiet Council of Krakoa alongside Xavier, and he actually helped protect humankind against larger cosmic threats. And these alliances here, he doesn't forgive humankind. He doesn't want to conform, but he realizes this is key, a new way of achieving mutant survival, to respect Xavier's long game and to acknowledge that brute force alone can't ensure and sustain a future. At the end of the day, he is a mastermind, he's intelligent, he is calculating, and most of all, he's charismatic. Why would he not play all of his cards and realize what's the best move forward? If I'm fighting the X-Men for a decade or more and I'm going back and forth with them over and over and over again, why would I not realize the cards that I'm dealt with and try to go about the future in a better way? It really hasn't been working. Why would I try to stay on a ship that's already sinking, you know? If you can't beat him, join him type situation, but he is getting better slowly but surely in accepting, yeah, it's possible that we can survive as a collective people because we're all part of the same race. Mutants and humans are still humans, they just have another gene within them, the X gene. That's what makes them different and special. And that gene right there is what should command respect from the humans because a lot of the mutants just want to be accepted. They want to help out, but they aren't making it any easier. But thankfully, there is understanding on both sides. Yes, Magneto might not fully agree with the dream of Xavier, but he understands it. He realizes that this is what's going to allow him to walk beside his former enemies. His capacity for reflection is what separates Magneto from a lot of the other static visions. Slowly but surely, he's evolving. It might be reluctant, but everyone he aligns with will end up being very powerful, and that is just what we need. Now we have Doctor Octavius. So with him, he is a character who is very brilliant, like a lot of the people here. I wonder, does brilliance equal being a psychopath? I don't know. But he has a lot of pride, a lot of intellect and achievements marked by his character, and that was really honed by a lot of academic rigor, is that the right word? And scientific innovations from him continuously working hard in the lab. And this confident persona is still rooted in intellectual superiority, but he still is quite humble for the most part. He's not going to flex on anybody and everybody, but there are some timelines where he is very meek, very timid, and he's not trying to be too much in the way of other people, and that leads to other people trouncing all over him. So it feels kind of like a tug of war, where like finally somebody wins and all the people are falling down. It feels like that once he finally turns into Doc Ock. All of the stuff within him finally explodes, even though it's not his fault. There's an accident, and this accident leads to him getting fused completely with his mechanical arms. And the destruction of the little inhibitor chip on his neck crushes all of the moral restraint that he had. And now it introduces a little duality. The arms, it feels like it's whispering to him all this paranoia. It leads to him having very extreme reactions, getting mad over very tiny inconveniences, and also erratic leadership. He does end up leading things like the Sinister Six, as a lot of us know, manipulating allies and enemies, and just reforming an entire authoritarian figure of himself. He forms a god complex, which is very interesting to see a literal like Michelin man do that. I gotta stop. That is disrespectful. That is disrespectful. I am sorry to everybody I offended with that. That is horrible. Somebody stop me. But as a person, he's kind of like Doctor Doom. He does possess a vision that he believes that he alone can remake the world in his own image. Whether it's the entire planet or his foreseeable world, I guess that remains to be seen, but his ambition has been amplified to literal megalomania. The line between scientist and villain, it has blurred, and he has created many plans to defeat Spider-Man, his one true enemy. It's really crazy because he creates long, overarching plots that we see over time just to defeat his enemies. With Spider-Man, he had to put on one of Otto's devices to defeat an enemy, right? It's over his head, and that rewires into his brain so that he could save the day. And this thing right here is what leads Otto to having the building blocks to his new plan to take over Spider-Man's body, because his current body is deteriorating after all of the fights that he had with Pete. So he's like, you know what, I'm gonna die soon. I might as well have one last hurrah and see if it works. And he actually ends up switching bodies with Spider-Man, and Peter just dies on the spot. It was crazy to see. 2013, 2014, that era. Oh my goodness, the amount of backlash that happened at that time was kind of crazy. But this new shift in body leads to a shift in personality. He's like, you know what? I'm Spider-Man now. I was just about to commit crimes and go about my daily business, but he's like, this is an opportunity to prove myself as the superior Spider-Man title drop. We see him optimize being a hero. It's really interesting because he adds elements of being a supervillain into that. He creates Spider-Bots who survey the entire city 24/7. Nobody has privacy. He even enlists in goons. This man has personal goons that help him fight against super criminals. On top of that, he actually made sure to develop and invest in weapons that are kind of deadly, but not really. Like, they go to a point, but they're not going to kill most people if he's careful. But if he crashes out, he has weapons to kill people in a microsecond. He has those 4 arms that extend out of his back to really mimic the Spider-Man lifestyle. Like, he is a full-on spider, but it also pays homage to his Doctor Octopus days. He's able to crawl around with it and even strike his enemies. He has claws and he's able to cut into people while also having nanites at the end of them to make those cuts really burn. He has a flamethrower and sonic devices to fight against symbiotes. He fully realizes that all of this is a game and I can make sure that I am leveled up to the nth degree. I got prep time on my hands, might as well use it. But the problem here is that he was really arrogant. One time Black Cat tried to put herself on him and he just socked her in the face. Like, he broke her teeth. He was very creepily trying to stalk and go on dates and talk to Mary Jane. It was very unnerving. On top of that, he brutalized Screwball right in front of cameras so everybody saw what Peter did. He even managed to shoot a villain in the head. I'm pretty sure it was one of the villains that Spider-Man fought when he had the Spider Armor Mark II and he didn't have his spider sense anymore. But this guy was a full-on psychopath who didn't have a moment of, I don't want to say like humanity, but like he didn't feel bad for any of his actions. So he just got the Glock and just shot him in the head. And the worst part about all of this is that all of the Marvel heroes thought that this was Peter. I don't know what type of stupid pills that they were on. This was probably the biggest downside of that run by Dan Slott. While it was creative and interesting, all of the heroes acted stupid as hell. I don't know what they were on, but either way, he does end up coming to a full loop by the end of his career. He has this entire epiphany. He learns about all of the memories of Peter Parker, especially those about the weight of moral responsibility. And he was burdened by a lot of the stuff that Green Goblin was doing. Green Goblin, Norman, he was going hard on Ock, and he was like, dude, I can't do this. The love of my life that I just found is going to die. And in this rare moment of introspection, it all culminates into humanity. He recognizes that he doesn't have the moral fiber to truly be Spider-Man. He doesn't have the dog in him to push himself to those level of limits. He doesn't have it. So he relinquishes all the mental control he had over Peter's body so that he could now be restored in full. While slowly but surely we saw him progress into a normal hero, right here is him sacrificing everything that he built. He enrolls Peter into Empire State University so that he could have his own doctorate. He builds Peter up into having his own company, Parker Industries, all of this stuff for a megalomaniac like Doc Ock. That should have been painful. But here, he realizes that he is making the conscious decision to step down, and in return, he steps away with newfound remorse. At the end of his life cycle, he truly finds out what it really means to be Spider-Man. The Riddler, one of the most annoying characters to ever go against if you're a video game fan, but one of the best, in my opinion, in terms of comics. He's always one of those characters that you could just plop into a story, and then if the writer knows what they're doing, it will become either an all-timer or just a really good time. And the thing with the Riddler that I really enjoy is how, at the end of the day, he's just, or even just a bunch of the Batman villains in general. I don't want to label anything as just generalized, but most of the time, Batman villains are just broken. They just need a push in the right direction, and you'll see them do better. That's what makes Batman's entire goal of not killing make sense, because there's so many of them that actually try multiple times to do good, and while they might have moments where they relapse back into old habits, they still do a lot of good. It's not like all the things that he did to help civilians go away. Those good deeds are still there. The lives are still saved, and I honestly want to see a storyline where somebody does good, say a Riddler, right? And then they relapse back into being a villain, but then they are met with the people that they once saved. And what type of logical conundrum will you be in? Will they not care? Will they think about it more? Will they decide, wait, am I tripping? Like, why am I doing this after I did all of this work to bring my life back into shape? That would be really cool. But the thing about Eddie is that he is burdened, I guess, with abuse, actually. Edward is a child prodigy. His intellect is what set him apart in a positive way. In a negative way, he was in a league of his own. So nobody really liked him at all. He grew up in a very dysfunctional household, right? His intelligence was met with jealousy rather than celebration. If not jealousy, they just saw their child as an alien. His father accused him of cheating and even beating him, despite the fact that he excelled. Whenever he did really good on a test, better than everybody else, got perfect, he's like, how is that possible? There's no way, because he does not expect anything of himself, so he expects nothing of his son in turn. It's really weird from a genetic level. How did he get so smart? Maybe it was his mom. We don't see his mom, I don't think, so maybe his mom was really like that. But there's a deep emotional wound to his character. He just wants to prove himself. He wants other people to accept and understand his intelligence. He just wants people to love him for who he is, and these experiences left him with a very compulsive need to show his worth, resorting in puzzles, death traps, riddles, just to show people that they can't solve the things that his brain can create. In layman's terms, he just wants to be accepted. He transforms the intelligence that he has, and he changes it into a weapon to fight against others, to show them why he's smarter than them, but also as a shield. I'm better than you. And then there's this entire ego trap that he falls into, which leads to him making mistakes and then Batman beating his ass. You know, it's not going to work out when you're going against the world's greatest detective, and even if he wasn't that, the billionaire has some technology on his sleeve. If he didn't want to do anything brain-related, he could just use Google, and if Google's not enough, he has a billion, maybe even $1 trillion bat computer built into his suit to deal with these kind of things. Batman should just create an AI and just make them do his work. Okay, that went pretty bad the last time that happened. Maybe not, but I guess it really doesn't matter. He has so many proteges to do his work for him if he just isn't having the best day, and Superman could just come in and take over. But the thing is with Edward is that he experienced a near-death transformation. He was struck in the head by Shining Knight's mace, which is pretty funny, honestly. This happened during Infinite Crisis. And he fell into a coma, and then he awoke, and then he was profoundly changed. It's actually pretty funny, because he lost all of his obsessive need to speak in riddles. He suffered all of this memory loss, so that means he had to rebuild his identity piece by piece for a time. So now he could start fresh. He is a blank slate. And although he retained his brilliance and a bit of his ego, he's kind of a little bit morally gray at times. His compulsion to challenge Batman, the most annoying part of being Batman on a bad day, all of that is faded. We're good. And this starts a really cool era in Paul Dini's Detective Comics, and this was the entire post-Infinite Crisis era until the very end. And we see him in his private detective era. So he pivoted from being a supervillain to now an investigator. He uses his abilities to solve crimes in the Gotham underworld. He works with civilians. He even works with other vigilantes like Batman. He assisted him on a ship-bound murder mystery, and while they did kind of approach it in really different cool ways, all of these angles eventually contributed to them actually solving the case. And this is where Batman saw the potential for a complete turnaround. There's a Wayne Enterprise case, hired by Bruce Wayne, right, to recover a stolen experimental drug, and with the help of Harley Quinn, who was also just reformed, he returned the drug to its rightful owners. And you see that he got tested out in two levels. There is the crime-fighting side, right, the Batman side, and then there was the Bruce Wayne side, the corporate espionage political area, and he managed to succeed in both. And then he teamed up with Nightwing. I don't know if this was during the time where Dick Grayson was Batman or not. He did team up with him in the post-Final Crisis era, I do remember that. But he investigated museum robberies and even managed to save Nightwing from gang violence, and he also deduced his secret identity, highlighting how smart he really is. And just like Riddler, who's known to get into very wacky hijinks, he finds Mary Marvel, of course, of Captain Marvel Shazam fame. She's a part of the Shazam family, and he fought Clayface alongside her and advised her to seek a mentorship because at this time she was growing very volatile. So here we see that he has a genuine concern for others, and he also has emotional insight. There's not just complete ego anymore. Gotham from this time after Batman's death, it does end up getting worse, and he tries to step up. He tries to solve the mystery of the new Black Mask terrorizing the city, and he gathered a team, and this team was the Gotham City Sirens. At this point in time, they were already formed, but they helped Nigma out. And this team obviously consists of Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and Catwoman. And what's really cool about this is that all of those characters, I'm not going to talk about them today, but all of them have went through a redemption arc, which is really cool to see that Batman's methods actually work. On the bad side of it though, Batman is losing a lot of his female villains, and at one point in time, he was known for having the best female rogues gallery ever. But these ideas don't just go away, so in my memory and yours, they are going to stay at that #1 spot. But here we see that his entire redemption, what makes it stand out, is that he doesn't completely overwrite his villainous core. He builds on top of it and he transforms it. He never became a complete good guy all of a sudden. He is doing a lot of this for money, but he chose to use his intellect in a lawful direction. And that's the best thing that we would ever want to wish for a villain in general. You don't have to completely turn into goody-goody two-shoes. You just have to point your chaos in a controlled direction. That's all we ask. If you can do that, great. Batman villain number 2, that is Killer Croc, one of the most misunderstood characters ever. This man is just trying to live his life, but the fact that he looks like a reptilian blob, people try to downplay, brother. They try to push him away. There are multiple times in comics where he tries to go for a job, and people stop him. He dropped off so many job applications and they just didn't get back to him, even for the position of being a bodyguard. How crazy is that? But he was born as a person struggling with an incurable congenital condition, and what this was is that it basically gradually transformed somebody into a reptilian appearance. I don't know if there was any sort of medical that they gave it, any fake term, any real term they tried to play off as being fake or vice versa. I don't know what I'm saying, but he was bullied and ridiculed as a child. As you might expect, children are kind of cruel, and he was considered a freak, and he was deeply hurt by a lot of that, as one would be. And his turning point came in when one person, a policeman actually, told him, "You're not a freak. You could grow up to be a president or a king." And that single little act of empathy sparked a little bit of self-worth into Waylon. And as a child, his aunt tried to scrub off the scales, thinking that it was something weird with his body or something that he did to it. And it was painful, it never fully came off. So he didn't exactly have the best childhood because she continuously tried to get it off every single bath time. And me saying that it was bath time should tell you that he was a little kid when this thing started. But that one thing that officer said changed his life. As an adult, he embraced his monstrous identity and placed that into a carnival wrestler identity at Haley Circus, the same circus as Dick Grayson, and adopted the identity of Killer Croc. Let's go. And from here, he always had a deep envy of the popularity of the Flying Graysons, especially a young Dick Grayson. That man had motion. For being an 8-year-old, he got it. And over time, his rage grew because he saw the closeness that he had with his parents. But it was something he could never really feel. Also, he was kind of hogging all of the attention as well. So he just felt like, well, my fans are treating me poorly. And in a fit of rage, he just bit off the hand of the manager, I'm pretty sure. After a lot of verbal abuse, they were treating him horribly. So it revealed right here his capacity for brutality, especially when he was emotionally hurt. Eventually, this led to him becoming a crime boss, a pretty smart one at that. People forget that he was very calculating. While he wasn't exactly a genius, his street smarts took him a very long way. He was a big threat for Batman. He wasn't exactly the dumb brute that a lot of people think he is. Even now, he's pretty intelligent, not Riddler level, of course, but he still has a brain, and this led to him fleeing into the Gotham sewers, and he made his little base right there, as a crocodile probably would. Is there crocodiles in Gotham? Let me know in the comments down below. There must be random crocodiles in the sewers somehow. I'm sure I've seen Killer Croc vibing with some crocodiles. I don't know if my brain is playing tricks on me. I'm sure it happened, guys. I'm sure. Anyways, the worst thing about being Killer Croc is that your monstrous mutation is continuously growing. The Arkham series is a very good visual depiction on how this works. In Origins, he seemed like a normal man, but just a bit more bulky. In Asylum, this man was probably 7, 8, maybe 9, 10 feet. He was a monster to say the least. The difference between the two is night and day. And then in Arkham Knight, he started growing a tail, got way crazier, and we learned that this is because every single time he regenerates, he gets more and more deformed. If we look at the normal Batman comics today, there is a little bit of back and forth. Sometimes he'll be really like crocodile-like, like in Batman Hush. Or if you look at something like Gotham City Monsters, which if you don't know, it's a monster team that Killer Croc was on while being a good guy, which was really cool. A 6-issue miniseries, pretty fun, good art. And that was a series where he was applying for jobs. So if you ever want to see something kind of iconic, check it out. But yeah, from there, he looked kind of normal. Even to now, he is. But if you want a little bit of a spoiler, in Batman #1 by Matt Fraction and Jorge Jimenez, I'm really looking forward to that, by the way, we see Killer Croc with the craziest mouth of all time. Look at this thing. It's not exactly absolute Killer Croc level because that thing is going to his armpit. It just went all the way around his mouth. Every single tooth looks like a giant knife. I would not want to get bit by that, but even then, he's trying to do his best. Yes, he might be in an Arkham facility, but still, he's trying to do better. His doctors see the progress. He's even really cute too. He even gave Batman a little crocodile dinosaur toy and walked away with his people. How wholesome is that? This man is so cute. But the first glimmer of compassion that I remember in Prime Earth was when he was fighting Roy Harper in Hell's Kitchen. And in this battle, we learned that Roy Harper was battling alcoholism. He had an addiction. And Roy attempted to manipulate Croc into helping him with assisted suicide. Of course, he was fighting them. It wasn't really that hard, but Croc showed compassion. He saw the social cues, and he started to comfort him, and he stepped in to actually be his sponsor for alcoholism to help him out in times of need. In DC Rebirth, which is really cool, is while he was working as, of course, a member of the Suicide Squad, which sucks. You should never put Croc there. He does not deserve that in the slightest. He was on a mission to retrieve a cosmic artifact. It was the portal to the Phantom Zone, and the squad had to fight General Zod, which is cooked enough as it is, but he actually intervened to save Enchantress from possible death. And from there, they shared a very vulnerable moment. Croc expressed fear of her dying, even shedding a real tear. And they actually became a couple in this, and it was really, really cool to see. He calmed her by encouraging self-reflection rather than having a complete confrontation. She was on an emotional rampage, and if you know anything about her powers, she can become very volatile. There's multiple personalities in that head of hers, and Croc managed to calm her down. It was very beautiful to see. If we look at his interactions with Red Hood in Red Hood and the Outlaws, what's really cool is that Red Hood gets a bunch of crates. He's like, bro, imagine the type of damage I could create with this. And Croc checks him. He's like, bro, why do you care? You should not care about the amount of damage you could do. There's more to life. Yes, you're probably a person who has like a lot of struggles and a lot of broken, I guess, relationships. But think about the people in your life. Think about having the best life as you can. Doing damage, all of that should become secondary. I know this is your profession in your life, but your family, that is what's most important. And he talks on experience because Red Hood, he's still a kid at this point. He's like, I don't know, 22, 23 at most. So he's very young, and all he's trying to do is take out Gotham criminals. But at this time, he had a truce with Batman to not do any of that. So Croc is trying to, for lack of a better words, whip him into shape to even the present day where Killer Croc is teaming up and allying with Poison Ivy, a person who also just reformed. And what's really cool about this is that he becomes the brother that a lot of these people never had. He started off, the 180 is crazy, as a mobster willing to send people out to kill others on his behalf. But now all he wants to do is create a shack, a home, for everybody that he knows and loves to live in, so that we could just be one singular group of people just rocking it out in the world. He also finds a lot of abnormalities, people who would be deemed as mutants, and brings them underground so that they could be a family. That is the one thing that he never had, and he tries to build it out in any way that he can. That's a good loop in my opinion, and the fact that this is something that stayed since the New 52, this redemption arc, is what makes this even more special. He chooses compassion when chaos is much simpler. He made a family for himself. Why would he ruin something that it took so hard, blood, sweat, and tears, for him to create? Quite possibly the second most famous redemption arc in comics is Deadpool. When he first got introduced, he debuted straight up as a villain. He was a hired assassin meant to kill Cable. He was very cold, very professional, ruthless. He still had that wisecracking attitude about him, but it was not exactly anything special. It felt very mean-spirited rather than very humorous or even meta. There was no real moral depth to his character. He felt like a ripoff of Deathstroke. That was his entire purpose to begin with, if we're being honest. But from there, we get another layer of complexity, right? And that was through Joe Kelly's Deadpool run. This was the first major turning point because now we saw him as a damaged, broken man. He's not just a joke, and he's not just a killer. And the series itself, it explores his time at Department K, which is the Canadian subdivision of Weapon X. His entire goal is to get bumped up on some Wolverine juice, and from there he might have a healing factor that might save him from the cancer that he just got diagnosed with. We get our first real deep dive into Deadpool's mental health. He started off as somebody that we knew was mentally not there, but the instability, we see how it progressed and how it starts, and from there we can chronicle it as we move through Deadpool's series. It gets marked off as ADHD, eventually becomes psychosis, multiple voices in his head, and then we see rapid shifts between mania and introspection. It's very unpredictable, just like his character, his combat style, and his dialogue. And finally, we see where the main conflict of the series comes from. It's the fact that Deadpool wants to be a hero, but he doesn't know how to. His relationship with Blind Owl turns from being abusive to regret. He now wants to redeem himself, but he doesn't believe he deserves it at the same time. That contradiction is at the heart of this series. And then he gets tied with Cable in Cable and Deadpool, and this book is what really elevates his moral compass. He starts working on missions that actually matter. He plays off of Cable's idealism, I guess, while still being very chaotic and self-centered. He begins forming relationships with people that aren't just purely transactional, of course coming back with Weasel, Agent X, Outlaw. He even sacrifices himself multiple times for the greater good. What I really love about this storyline is that it shows Deadpool having to work with Cable. This is forced cooperation that ends up leading into one of the best friendships because their bodies are linked to a virus. And from there, Wade joins Cable's efforts to build a better world. Cable even ends up stabilizing Deadpool's mind temporarily, getting rid of a lot of the brain damage that he has so that he could think clearly. In the Daniel Way run, we see him try to join the X-Men, but fails. We see him try to join X-Force, and that just doesn't work. He wants to be a hero, but he keeps failing. Yet behind all the humor that got upped a lot in this run, there's a lot more meta humor and insanity in Daniel Way's work. But we see there's a deep loneliness behind all of it, a longing to connect. And there's more voices in his head. The yellow and white boxes, they become more prominent. His fourth wall breaking is more at the forefront, but as I've said before, he's deeply sad. He is the comic relief. He is the sad clown that can never stop joking because that is his medicine. The moment he stops, he gets brought back into reality. He has to act like an insane mess just so that he can keep his mind right. But all of this changes once Jerry Duggan gets on the book, because here he discovers that he has a daughter named Ellie. And here he tries to be a father. He has to stay clean. He has to not be involved in a world of violence just for his daughter's sake. He even gets married to, like, what's her name? Shikala, something like that. The queen of the underworld. He starts to form more emotional bonds that are more stable than ever before. Now he has people to care about, and now he has actual consequences. He has to clean his act up. He joins the Avengers. He now has an Avengers ID card. His bag is now where it should be. And later on in this run, he actually becomes the most popular superhero. He's rich. He's famous. He's loved. He creates a franchise called Mercs for Money, a team basically built on being a mercenary but doing stuff for good. He said this before, that he's not a good guy. He's a bad guy hired to kill other bad guys. At this point in time, that wasn't exactly the case, but that still holds true to the character of Deadpool. That is his thesis. And he realizes fame corrupts, friends betray him, his wife dies, his daughter is lost again. And he realizes that being a hero doesn't really undo the past. All of it is going to catch up with him. But still, fundamentally, his mind has changed. This run, while it shows him going down to zero, he can never be the person that he once was. He has changed for the better. Recently, Ellie is now Deadpool. There are 2 Deadpools and 2 Wolverines, Logan and Laura, and all of them are kind of like this one happy family kinda, not really. They go on missions together, and Deadpool now has a sense of happiness. He's now back on track, and his trajectory is looking really nice. Hopefully they maintain this, but even if they don't, he has come a really long way from being a mercenary villain who was just a Deathstroke ripoff. Good stuff all around. And finally, we have one of my favorite characters in comics, and that is Loki. And Loki, his entire shtick is being very malleable and always changing. Evolution is the key of the game in this circumstance, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So, Loki, he started off in the 1960s as a pure trickster villain, right? Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, that classic era. He was literally the villain you would expect to twirl their mustache. It was that bad, but he was obsessed with conquering Asgard. His main goal was to defeat Thor, prove his superiority, and he was motivated by envy, pride, desire to be king, all that simple stuff. We know how it is. And he was the god of mischief, but his mischief was usually world-ending. Not exactly on the tinfoil, but he manipulates Hulk into fighting the Avengers. That was the first thing right there. And he also tries to trigger Ragnarok more than once, which is okay. Buddy, fool me once, fool me twice, you know the rules. During this time, Loki is just evil for the sake of being evil, rarely ever sympathetic, and he's never self-aware, which is fine. I made a whole video on this, I love pure evil villains. I eat that up. Give me villains who don't care. They are the best. I'll go band for band, bar for bar, arguing with people on why these villains are the best, way better than any sympathetic villain. I love those guys too, as you'll see later with Loki's transformations, but his personality is very arrogant, theatrical, manipulative, cruel. That's the villain juices that I will eat. Dude, that's the good stuff. But there we go to the more tragic figure in the 2000s, right? Loki begins to humanize. Marvel begins to show his pain of being adopted by Odin, being raised beside Thor, but never truly loved or seen as his equal. Yes, Thor loved him, but Odin was like, you know who the favorite child was, you know what I mean? Loki's motivations become more than just gaining power. He's resentful, he's lonely, but now we understand that he's misunderstood and desperate to be seen. From there, he's essentially trapped in this fate. He's a god destined to be a villain. I am Loki, the fire that burns, the god who knows too much. This is the first serious attempt to making him a tragic anti-villain, without him being too sympathetic. In the Siege event in early 2010, we saw Loki die. I'm pretty sure by the Sentry, the Void aspect of the Sentry, he just got blipped off the map. And from here, Loki then becomes a new version, a rebirth, if you will, as Kid Loki. He's reborn a child, and from here, he retains none of his past sins. He's clever, mischievous, as always, but now he's innocent. He struggles with everybody around him, expecting him to be an evil villain. He wants to do good, but in his nature, his methods are very manipulative and very snaky as a snake. But it's Loki. He's the god of mischief. What more do you expect? He's doing all he can. The internal struggle of this book is, can somebody who is a villain be good at heart? Can they ever be good? Can their nature outdo the nurture? And in this instance, which one is which? He got reborn anew. Is this now his new nature? It becomes a little bit confusing, but it ends with him, again, tragically sacrificing himself. And from here we realize he is a self-sacrificing character. So just by his actions, we tell that he's made it a long way, and he's replaced with a new adult Loki, who has all of the memories, but is not exactly the same person. The anti-hero god of stories. And this version is neither fully villain or hero, but we see that he fully rejects the God of Lies title. He works with the All-Mother to do a bunch of secret missions, and all of this is in exchange for having his entire slate wiped clean. All of his past misdeeds will be erased from history with a hand wave, which is honestly a next level of power. And people in this run often ask, they'll never believe you're good, so why bother? He even ends up fighting an evil version of himself, showing that he fears to regress back into what he was. This was King Loki, and he ends up winning. And then that leads us to modern Loki, who's more not bound by stereotypes, very gender fluid, which is fine. I know a lot of people have problems with things like this, but he is a shapeshifter. He is the god of mischief. And on top of that, he is a person with a history of being a woman multiple times. So I don't have a problem with it, and the design is fire. But yeah, he's completely unshackled, unbound by the villain or hero archetype. He's more of a trickster force of change, disrupting the status quo. And if you know anything about comics, we always need that. We will always love to see that. And for him, change must occur. He becomes the king of the frost giants for a bit, and he actually becomes a bridge between the realms, creating peace for the very first time. And while he is occasionally noble, he's sometimes deceptive, but now he is no longer evil. In the War of the Realms and King of Black arcs, the giant, massive mega events of Marvel that we all hate, but when they're good, they do bang. Here, he actually tries to work for the greater good. Even if it is for his own personal good, it's still helping a variety of other people across dimensions, so we'll take what we can get. He remains a cosmic wildcard, never really good or evil, but he's never going to steep down into what he was in the past. He might be selfish a little bit, but he shows that he isn't trying to be love. He's just trying to prove that he can change. He rebels against all of the myths that are forced upon him. He constantly changes and evolves. He's a villain, a child, a woman, an anti-hero, a trickster, a king. We realize in Agent of Asgard, that storyline, Loki learns that stories shape who you are, and rewriting them is the key to change. In this instance, in the most metaphysical way possible. But yeah, guys, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live, and remember to leave down below what were your favorite redemption arcs in comics. Of course, I can't cover all of them, so feel free to leave them down below. But yeah, see you all later, take care, deuces.